Alright, so today we're going to turn that Windows Server 2022 instance into a domain controller. So first thing I'm going to do is power up my Windows Server. So I'm just going to say start. We're going to do a normal start on that. And then, so the first couple things we're going to do once this boots up is set a static IP and give the computer a new name. So first thing I want to do is make sure that my IP address is open. So I've already installed NMAP on this machine. This is on my Linux machine, but I'll put a link to how to do it on Windows. I can install it and show you how to use it. But so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to, so I've already installed NMAP, I didn't want to wait. So we're just going to say NMAP, we're going to pay, so the IP I've got is 192.168.0.232. And I think that's it. I just need to do that and then let it scan. And it should tell me if there's anything there. So it says 0 hosts up, just as a quick scan. I just like to be sure. So I'm going to use that IP address. I think I'm pretty comfortable with that now. So let's go ahead and get into my Windows machine. And keyboard, Control Delete. Log in. Cool. Wait for Server Manager to pop up here. Alright. And I think we're done. Okay, cool. So we're going to go local server. Give it a second to refresh everything. So you can see right now this machine's in a work group. It's got kind of the generic name that Windows just kind of names every computer. You know, it's usually Win, and then this last little bit is fairly random. Probably not as random as I think. So anyways, let's first thing we want to do is set the static IP address. So we can click here. And let's just say right click properties, and we're just going to do the IPv4. Just double click on that. We can add this in. So we're going to say 192.168.0.232. And then that's the correct subnet mask. It's just a class C or 24-bit, however you want to say it. 192.168.0.1. That's my gateway. And then for now, we're just going to use Google, so we'll just say 8.8.8.8. This will change 8.8.4.4. Eventually, when you install domain controller, it's also going to want to install DNS, and we're going to be the preferred DNS. But for now, this is what we're going with, just so we can continue to run. Let's give it a second to figure things out. I'm probably going to get the little pop-up message. It says, oh, we found a new network. Let's see, unidentified network, yeah. Okay, cool. Let's make sure everything works. Let's open PowerShell. I'm going to run it as administrator. I don't need it for this part, but the next part I will need it as administrator. And let's make this a little bigger for you. Where's properties? There it is. And let's bring the font up to, I don't know, 24. Let's see if that's too big. Ugh, that's kind of borderline, but we'll take it. Okay, so we'll just do a quick ping of 8.8.8.8. Let's see if we get a response. Let's see if our network's set properly here. Network. Oh, that's why net. So we wanted to set the bridge to actually. I think that will actually fix our problem. Yep. Let's see. I think that fixed it. Yeah, there it goes. So, yeah, one of the settings you're definitely going to do, we'll go back to that real quick, is go to network settings. Make sure this is bridged. I think it's NAT, which gives you kind of another private network that's not routable. It's routable within your machine out, but it's not. But nothing like none of my other computers could get to it. So there. Okay, good. So let's go ahead and clear that screen for now. All right. So we've got network connectivity. We verified that. If you hover over, it says internet access too. So we're moving along pretty good. Okay, so we can see the host name is this win n6 whatever. So we're going to do a rename computer, and this is why I went to administrator, because there it is, rename computer, and we're going to call this DC1, and let's just say restart computer. And we can restart it. Here we go. We'll wait for this to reboot. Anytime you rename a computer with Windows, you definitely have to reboot. It has not changed. I don't know if 11's any different, probably not, but I'm assuming these both are using a very similar kernel. Alright, so let's go back to devices. Cool. We'll log back in. And when we log in this time, we should see a static IP address and the new computer name. Let's wait for Server Manager to pop up. Alright, so let's see. So pull this up. Alright, so we can already see our computer name has changed from that win-random characters to DC1. We're still in work group. And yeah, we've got our Ethernet set for static IP. So good. I think that's all the big stuff. Now the other thing you're going to want is some sort of domain already picked out before you promote this computer. So I am going to use one of my domains for this. And you want to use something that's actually real, not .local. That used to be the case that everybody would use .local, but when you had to buy a real certificate for your servers, that did not work. Okay, so the next step is to add a domain controller. So we'll make sure you're on this local server. Typically when it comes up like this. You want to make sure you're on a local server. Say manage. Add roles and features. We're not, yeah, that's just that. We're not doing remote desktop, we're doing a feature. That's our server, that's the IP, that's the name. And what we're going to do is we're going to add, what was it called? Active Directory domain. Which one was it? Oh, there's, okay. Sorry, I lost it for a second. Okay, so it's going to add all this other stuff too by default. And let's go ahead and say next. It'll probably prompt me to do DNS. Let's see. And then we don't need anything over here. Set DNS. So we're going to just tell it. So this is just basically saying restart the computer when this is done. I do this just because then I don't have to babysit it quite as much. And we say install. Alright, so looks like that's done. So close. Then it didn't need to reboot. Sometimes it does. That does. Let's see if it reboots here. Give it a minute. Nope, doesn't look like it's rebooting. Okay, so we didn't have to reboot. I'm going to click on here. And then we've got post. So you'll click on this little, I don't know, caution or warning symbol. And it'll say post deployment configuration. And you'll want to say promote. So right now, so what we've done is we just installed the features. Now we actually have to promote this machine to an actual domain controller. So we're not adding it to the domain to an existing domain. We're not adding it to an existing forest. We're going to add a new forest. So we're going to call this 80 .happysubnet.com. Yes, I do own Happy Subnet. That is one of my domains that I own. And 80.happysubnet.com. I always recommend don't you do it at the root level. I would always add something like 80 or maybe DS for directory services. I think 80 is probably more common. But anyways, but I can buy a certificate from this or generate one. So we're going to say next. Force functional level. Yeah, there's no new functional level. Interesting. Okay, we're going to put our password in. Now this is a password that will just be for this domain controller. And what it is if something goes wrong and you need to do some sort of restore, this is the password you're going to need. So make sure you do know this one. In theory, it should be unique per domain controller, though a lot of places have worked it's the same per domain controller, so I don't know. Ideally different, but not unusual to see it the other way. So we're going to go with 2016, the newest functional level. Say next. Yep. So we're going to create DNS delineation if it lets me. Alrighty, so I guess we won't. It's grayed out, so I guess we'll see what happens next. Next BIOS name. It's probably just going to be AD. Well, and I'm okay with that. Yep. PAS. Now, in a production environment, I would recommend that these sit on different drives. Maybe you don't usually need a big drive for these. Depending on how big your organization is, you might be able to get away with a 10 or 20 gigabyte drive, especially if these are virtual. I definitely would be doing. If they're physical, maybe a little tougher. Doing a partition is not going to do a lot of help. What you want to do is separate these on spindles. Again, it depends on how big your organization is. I've worked at places that have 150 users, and this really doesn't matter, but places I worked at have 100,000 users, yeah, that matters. It helps performance quite a bit. So just know your environment and know which better. So anyways, let's go next. And so you can see the additional options. It's going to add the DNS server in for us, and we're just going to say next. Just checking all the prerequisites. This always takes a minute or two. Alright, so just some warnings. These are pretty normal warnings that you would see. And we're going to say install. And we'll check back in when this is done. Alright, looks like we're getting ready to reboot. And there it goes. It's doing that on its own. I didn't have to touch it. I'm just going to move the mouse so my Linux system doesn't try to blank out the monitor. And the next boot's going to take a while. It's got to create a lot of stuff. So don't stress. Alright, so it looks like it stopped doing its thing, or finished, I guess. Finished rebooting, finished installing. So let's go ahead and go back in and see where we're at. So now you can see we got AD backslash, because that's now we're logging in to the domain controller versus the local machine. You can't log into the local machine anymore because the domain controller. So anyways, let's go ahead and log in. It's the same password so it converts your local administrator account to a domain account and any other local admin account. If you had multiple accounts on that, it would actually convert them all to domain accounts. So just keep that in mind. Give it a second here. We need to check a couple things, but I think we're pretty close to done here. I'm going to let this server for a second. Okay, so let's go to local server. So, yep, now we can see here's our domain. So we didn't have that before. That's our domain controller name. This is the actual domain name, ad.happysubnet.com. And that's great. Let's look at DNS. So, yep, DC1. And just checking. Yep, looks like we've got some records. Probably nothing else. Yep, that's it. And that's what I expect. There's not much in here because it's a brand new domain. The one thing I did want to check here was Let's see, can we look at the Ethernet, change adapter settings? What I want to do is make sure that it made itself. Yep. So it made itself the preferred DNS server. So it's actually using the local host address 127.0.01. You could also replace this with 192.168.0.232. Now, if you have multiple domain controllers in the environment, you would put another domain controller as a secondary. You never want to use something like Google after this. You'll want to make sure it's one of the DNS servers within your Active Directory environment, or if you delegate that to another device within there. But typically, most places I worked, all but one, I should say, always used Active Directory DNS. So you can use other DNS, but it's a little more tricky. But for the lab, this is great. So that's it. We've got domain controllers. So this is actually a full-fledged domain controller. Now we just need to start putting together some users and computers. But now we've got a domain controller. So this is step one to a new test environment. Anyways, thanks for watching. I hope you found this interesting. Bye.